Jacob's happy now, but he realized he's penniless, and he wants to go back home. So he goes to Laban and says, let me work out a deal here where I can get some of the herd, so I've got something to go back to my home with. They make a deal, and Laban says, oh, I've got a good idea. You get to have all the cattle that are born spotted, and all the black sheep. In other words, all the unusual types of things. And that can be your herd, and you can take it with him. Now, there's a message in this, because suddenly, out of nowhere, all the sheep start coming out black. And all the goats come out spotted. And all the abnormalities become the normal, and the normals become the abnormalities. And when the whole thing is over, after 7 years of working, Jacob's share of the herd is larger than Laban's. There's a message in this. You notice that Jacob fooled his blind father and got the birthright blessing by trickery. But you notice that he was blinded by being drunk and going into the tent and wound up marrying the wrong girl because he was deceived by Laban. But now Laban is getting his comeuppance because he tried to trick Jacob by getting the bigger part of the herd, and God turns it around and turns it to Jacob's advantage. The lesson in this, you don't get away with anything, not even when you're doing good. You got to take your lumps when you do something that's not quite right. Don't be surprised that there's a consequence and a blessing awaiting you with every decision you make. This is a principle of God. And we want to be aware of it. Talk about fear of God. This is about respecting the way things work. The universe is set up to be just. Be sure we're weighing our life on the positive investments and not get caught up in the negative investments of life. Jacob then packs up his family, returns to Israel. His brother has long forgotten all the issues, and they meet and they're friends and they're buddies. And that's the story of how Jacob got to be Jacob. And he has 11 sons. The story goes that as Joseph starts to grow up, he starts having strange dreams. He dreams that there are 10 shocks of wheat and 1 shock of wheat. That this shock of wheat is his, while the others are his brothers. And their shocks bow down to his shock. He has several dreams, all of them including where he is looked up to and his 10 older brothers are all bowing down before him. This infuriates the brothers. What's this guy doing having these kinds of... of course, they don't believe him. They don't think this, but Jacob knows that this is from God. And somehow this is going to come true. Well, he's so happy with Joseph that Jacob buys him a special gown. In those days, colored garments were very hard to come by. It's called the coat of many colors. In some ways, we could say this is a symbolism. This is the coat of many incarnations or many times of life. It can have various. It means perhaps the coat of many peoples. Who knows what it all means, but it has a symbolism. Well, he comes out to show his brothers his new fancy coat that his father gave him, and they become extremely angry and jealous. They decide it's time to do away with this punk. The brother Judah, who is the ancestor of what we know are the Jews, says, let's kill the little character and do away with it. But Reuben, the older brother, says, no, that's going too far. We want to get rid of him, but that's going too far. And there was a passing caravan on its way to Egypt. They said, let's just sell him to the Egyptians. We'll make a little money on the deal. And that way we get rid of him. So they sold Joseph into slavery. And they went to their father. They took the coat of many colors and dipped it in blood of a sheep. And then took it to their father and said, look what happened. A wolf got Joseph when he was on his way out to see us. And we found his body, and the wolf ate him. And of course, Jacob is just devastated. This is his beloved Joseph. And to find out that a wolf ate him is just not very happily. So then, but now you can imagine Joseph. He's put in a basket. His hands are tied and bound, and he's about 17 years old, and he put in a basket on the side of a camel. And you can picture him, riding along. What did I do wrong? Why me? I've tried to do the right thing all along. Why do my brothers hate me? Why would God let me fall into this complete disaster? But when he arrives in Egypt, they put him on the block to sell him. And a very wealthy man named Potiphar comes along. He's looking for someone special, someone who can read and write, which is very rare. He finds out that Joseph can read and write. And so he buys Joseph. And after a while, he finds out Joseph is brilliant, honest, and has integrity. He can put him in charge of all of his affairs. And so he's in charge of his money, he's in charge of his lands, he commands everyone under the house of Potiphar. One day, the beautiful wife of Potiphar comes to see Joseph because Potiphar went off to the big city to do some business. And she comes to Joseph and she says, Joseph. And it's reputed that Joseph was extremely handsome. Joseph, come lay with me, she says. He says, I'm sorry, I can't. What do you mean you can't? I'm a servant of God. I can't do that. I have a covenant with God. I don't behave this way. I would never dishonor Potiphar nor my God. She says, Joseph, I'm telling you right now, you better lay with me, because if you don't, I'm going to rip my clothes. I'm going to scream to the high heavens and scream rape. And you know what they'll do to you if you're accused of rape. He says, I'm sorry, I can't do this. So she rips her clothes, she screams it loud, and everybody comes running. And she says, Joseph tried to rape me. So they tie Joseph up. When Potiphar comes home, you can imagine his rage. He says to Joseph, after everything I did for you, Joseph, I took you out of slavery, basically. I put you in charge of everything. You were living like a king. And you would rape my wife? What kind of evil being are you? I'm going to make you suffer, Joseph. I'm going to make you suffer. And he sends him off to a prison of great horrors. And they have the pit where they put the worst of criminals, where there's no one around. They're all by themselves. They lower the food down to them. And they see not the light of day. And that's where they put Joseph. Now you can imagine Joseph down there in this pit saying, God, why is this happening to me? What have I done? I did the right thing. I stood up for what you wanted me to do. Why would you put me in this terrible condition? Nevertheless, he puts his trust in God. He said, but thy will be done. Just when he was in the basket coming across, I'm in your hands, Lord. Do with me as you will. I trust you. Well, eventually the jailers began to figure out that this young boy down there, young man, down in the hole, is not some terrible creature, and they actually take him out of the hole and let him go with the rest of the prisoners. One day, the Pharaoh, it's found, somebody attempted to assassinate the Pharaoh by putting poison into his either food or drink, and they don't know which. So they grabbed the guy who's called the butler, who's in charge of his drinks, and the cook, who's in charge of his food, and they throw them both in prison while they try to figure out which one's guilty. And while they're in there, these two guys are waiting the judgment. They have a dream. Each one has a dream. And the next morning they wake up, they wonder, what does this dream mean?